Hi everyone, welcome to Product Circle. I hope you're doing well. Don't worry, this is Product Circle and not a sushi shop like it looks like in the background here. This is my room divider. So yeah, I've got working from home as I'm sure everyone is. Everyone's a little bit different, and if the room divider is the worst thing that I have to deal with, then obviously not doing too badly. But I hope everyone else has a little bit more aesthetically pleasing background for you tonight. I was tempted to put on a fake background, but I thought people might see through that and be a little bit more yeah, interested in what was behind me than the actual reality of just a messy bedroom. So yeah, hope you're all doing well. Welcome along to the first kind of agile data digital product session of Product Circle that we've done in a little while. We've been doing more sort of UX focused stuff. Someone kind of wanted us to do that. We haven't really been focusing on that side of digital product teams for a while, so we kind of took a break from doing the data and agile stuff and did that, but that's the really sort of idea of Product Circle. It is supposed to be a meetup for everyone who's not a developer, basically, within a digital product team. Developers have plenty of meetups that they can go along to. So but having said that, our first speaker of the event tonight, Krishna Veni Rapuru, is actually the software engineering manager at Medidata Solutions. So she's going to be giving you a pretty good insight into the sort of data journey that they've been on, and from a kind of software engineering perspective as well. So it'll be a good mix of like technical and kind of product related content there for you. So thanks very much to the guys at Medidata for sponsoring this one as well. I know they've done some pretty good work advertising it. So thanks very much to Magda and Andrew and all those guys over there that have been working tirelessly behind the scenes to get this event up and running. And then also our second speaker of the evening is Amrit Lotay. Amrit has had a really interesting background. She's been working as a business analyst for the Ministry of Justice. She's done global head of service delivery for Tantalum, and she's recently joined as the chief digital officer for a cardiovascular HealthTech startup called RhythmiaBreath. So she's got really sort of diverse background, but it's still kind of niched within that kind of digital journey. And yeah, she's done everything from kind of like infrastructure and support all the way through to there being like a CDO, which is within a startup is a pretty big responsibility, right? So it's going to be really interesting to hear the content from these guys tonight about the insights into their digital product teams. Both from a kind of technology perspective, but also from a healthcare perspective. We've been shining a bit of a spotlight on that recently on the UX side of things. So it's great to see, more from the sort of data side of it, how, the healthcare industry differs from, everyone else's industry, basically, and the similarities as well. So it is a live event, as you can probably tell from my waffling. So yeah, if you do want to get involved at any stage and ask any questions, you can ask on the comments section, which I believe is on this side of me here. If it's not, then I'll do this as well, just in case. But yeah, you get involved in the comments. At the end of each of the presentations, we'll be having a Q&A as part of a panel. So Amrit will be able to ask Krishna some questions and vice versa, as well as fielding the questions from you guys in the audience as well. So yeah, if you did have any questions or comments or anything like that, if you wanted to obviously shoot me some comments or thoughts, we're always looking for feedback on how we're running these things. So yeah, feel free to send me a message directly offline as well, and I'll be more than happy to chat to you either about this event or future events as well, because we've got a nice pipeline now coming up of these events. So anyway, I'll let you enjoy what you came here for, and that is the two awesome speakers that we've got lined up this evening. And if there's anything I can do for you guys, I'll let you know, but I'll speak to you guys again in a little bit. So enjoy.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very excited to share some insights about data migration within the life science industry and how Medidata does clinical data migration. I promise all of you get some valuable takeaways. from this talk. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Krishna, working as an engineering manager in Medidata Solutions for the past 4 years. I started my career as an engineer 12 years ago and worked through different roles across different industries like healthcare, government, and public sectors. I have been leading and managing teams for the past 6 years. My passion has always been technology and working with people. I love exploring and learning new things. On the personal front, I'm a mother of 2 crazy kids and I really enjoy spending time with them. Let's get started. I'll start with a brief intro about Medidata, then what is CTMS and clinical data means. After, I'll be doing a deep dive into clinical data migration and we'll be concluding with best practices along with Q&A. Now let me talk about Medidata for a moment. Medidata is a growing company and part of Dassault Systems. We are a globally distributed company headquartered in New York with around 2,500 employees. And Europe is the fastest growing market within Medidata. We are really having an impact by working together with clients, customers, and partners to provide a better quality of life to so many human beings, helping our customers provide new drugs that cure cancer and other serious diseases is really something that has a positive impact on society. And that really motivates me tremendously day by day. Bit more on Medidata. Top 13 out of 15 drugs sold in 2017 was developed using Medidata technology. Every time I read this kind of news and I see that one of our clients has launched a new drug, I'm obviously very proud and also very motivated because all of the drugs that have been developed by our partners and clients were touched by Medidata's platform. Here you can see some of the big and major brands who are part of the Medidata client base. Before going into the details of migration, let me give you a short brief on what is CTMS and what classifies as clinical data, which is a key pre-step before we delve into the details of the migration for this session. So, what is CTMS? CTMS is a market standard solution provided to CROs, that is clinical research organization and sponsors, who can conduct intelligent trials which enable them to roll out drugs to the market. Now, going to the diagram from left to right, on the left-hand side, we can see that there are 2 segments of data migration, which comes into Medidata Clinical Cloud. Medidata Clinical Cloud is a cloud-native application and data ecosystem. First segment being all the data which comes from electronic devices integration, otherwise called EDC, which is nothing but electronic data capture, which are used in trial sites, hospitals, and other pharmaceutical organizations. Second segment of data, which we're calling as other resources, comes from lab equipments, sensors, X-ray images, and electronic-based agreements. Second key integral part of Medidata ecosystem is CTMS. which you can see here, CTMS consumes and publishes data in and out of Medidata Clinical Cloud. It is primarily used by CROs or sponsors and other specific users within clinical industry to track and manage what study wants to be conducted, where and by whom. This is known as core study. How many patients, which we're calling as subjects, visited a site or a location, calling subject visits. How many of them are enrolled on the trial? Track and measure around this. This is known as enrollment. What issues are faced as part of this trial process? Who and how to resolve? This is called issues and actions. What is the status, timelines, and progress of the trial, known as milestones? Lastly, there are regulatory and country compliance requirements and standards, which has to be met as part of this entire process. By the way, for those who are interested, all this information is available on our website. So let's start with why. Why it is very important to have a clear data migration strategy. Because even if we build a near perfect technology platform, once bad data drives the platform, it can turn out to be a potential disaster and nightmares. This will result in difficult customer adoptions and retention issues, revenue impact, and lastly, incorrect and high volatile behaviors, which drives inaccurate analytics. So now let's talk about what is the vision and purpose behind data migration for Medidata, specifically around CTMS. As part of the vision, there are key three main goals which we wanted to achieve. How can we provide a seamless and unified data migration platform for our existing and new customers? How to provide an upgrade path for our existing customers from legacy systems to Medidata Clinical New Platform to reduce cost and improve operational efficiency. Last and final goal being providing a single and 360 view of migrated data to our both internal and external customers through intelligent monitoring and reporting. As part of the migration strategy, key areas of risk and constraints which needs to be considered are potential data loss during migration because of cleaning, transformation, and various mapping activities. Various time-bound factors like time and duration of overall activity, overlap and sync of old and migrated data could create data inconsistencies between source and destination, which may potentially lead to data integrity issues as well. Lastly, capability or functionality gap between source and destination systems. It's a fact that we can't do a like-to-like match of all functionalities between source and destination. So it can end up in loose or consolidation of functionality and data in destination. Now, let me talk through the approach we have taken to achieve overall strategy and execution. As you see here, there are three key stages: analysis, development, go live, and support. During the analysis phase, we have set objectives, scope, and success criteria, along with identifying and engaging with key stakeholders and partners, which includes customers as well. Then we performed a detailed data analysis where we assessed data models between source and destinations, along with data quality. This generated data specification document, quality of data in source systems, mapping document which captures data relationships between source and destination, and finally capturing all customer journeys with respective data flows. Next key stage is development, where we design, build, and test. As part of the design phase, we came up with high-level enterprise architecture. After that, we went through the buy or a build process, where we did technology or tool selection based on scale, complexity, ease of adoption, business value, cost, and time to market. Then we defined and documented all mapping and translation routes. During the build phase, we developed capabilities to extract data from different sources in different formats, transforming the same into a unified format which destinations can understand, and also adhere to all mapping and business rules. Along with the transformation, we also built the capability to publish the data into destination systems in certain sequences so that data integrity was maintained. The most important part which we developed the solution is around the right level of instrumentation so that we can proactively monitor, measure the system availability and performance. Key challenge is not just building the solution, but to have a proper test strategy to test both sanity tests with smaller data sets and also volumetric data test. This test strategy was executed by a combination of both automation and manual spot test. Once we have developed the system or a solution and test strategy established, we ran several cycles of tests, issue identifications, and fix till we meet our quality acceptance goal. In addition to system design and testing, we also built a reporting capability where user can identify, trace the data, follow and resolve the issues in a timely manner. This in turn helps to maintain the data integrity between source and destination and seamless customer experience. Last stage, which is critical stage, that is go live and support. This is the stage where we deploy the solution into production in an automated fashion, integrating with a centralized monitoring system. Before actual migration starts, we define a business process flow where every customer needs to go through a pilot run of a real customer data to check end-to-end flow with all integrations is working as expected or not. Once the pilot run successfully completes, then we cleanse the customer data and perform actual migration. This is not a one-day job, and it's a cycle of activities which happens over the time, which needs continuous care and support till we achieve our migration completion goals for each customer. A while ago, I found this image accidentally when we were going through a challenging phase of the project. Believe it or not, this is so true. No matter how big the migration, how well we plan, there will be always some surprises and challenges. So, I would like to share some of the challenges we went through and how did we address them. First one, connect with key stakeholders. No matter the size of the migration, validate your assumptions with key stakeholders and explain the impact on them before you get going on the task. If you don't, it will backbite you at some stage, and that will disrupt your timelines. Second key one, constant communication with the business. Once you have explained the project to the stakeholders, be sure to keep them informed of your progress. It's best to provide a status report on a weekly basis, especially if things get off track. Next being data governance. Be sure you are clear on who has rights to create, approve, edit, or remove data from the source system, and document that in writing as part of the project plan, or define the clear process. If you ask me, this is the key for success, which is planning. Do not underestimate the analysis between source and target systems, and understand at least 70% before planning. We went to development with a 40% understanding and resulted in good amount of changes in destination systems and behavior in a short time. This also generated rework during the development phase. Another important one to consider, having the right skills and expertise. Although this is the straightforward task, there is a lot of complexity involved in moving data. Having an experienced professional with excellent knowledge on both source and destination helps the process go smoothly. Next, don't wait for perfect spec. Make a start and go with 70% readiness. You have to iterate as you go along to reach the target state. Last but one, having a clear strategy and execution around testing. We made a choice to go with full automation, then realized it was too much upfront cost and it slowed us down. Then we went with the hybrid approach of automation and manual. Finally, not spending a good amount of time on dry run with real sample source data, especially data variations during development and release cycle. Lastly, I would like to share a few best practices that we have been doing. I think it is an important aspect to cover and give the opportunity to gain a little bit from our experience and understand what is working. So, tip 1, understanding the data. Before starting the data migration, you have to prepare your data for the migration. Carrying out an assessment of what is present in the source system, understanding clearly which data needs to be migrated. We can divide the assessment of source system in two macro categories: assessment of data meaning, assessment of data quality. Data meaning: every piece of data that you move is something that has to be validated, cleaned, and transformed. In data migration projects, migrating only relevant data ensures efficiency and cost control. Understanding how the source data will be used in the target system is important and very much necessary for defining what to migrate. The second macro area is the assessment of the quality of the data. It is important to define a process to measure data quality early in the project. The quality analysis typically leads to a data cleaning activity. Cleaning the source data is a key element of reducing data migration effort. Tip 2: project governance. The best for approaching data migration project is clearly defining roles and responsibilities and avoiding accountability overlapping. This can be done in several steps. Define the owner of the data in the target system. Include the business users in decision making. They understand the history, the structure, and the meaning of the source data. Based on our experience, what makes a difference is the presence of business analyst. This is the person that acts as a bridge between the technical staff involved in the technical implementation of the migration and the business people. Tip 3: rollback and dry run. A rollback strategy has to be put in place in order to mitigate risks of potential failures. Access the source data has to be done in read-only mode. This prevents any kind of data modification and ensures its integrity. Tip 4: the importance of the data migration specification document. This document is the core of data migration. It ensures a complete field mapping, and it is used to create all mapping rules and exceptions. This project phase is usually long and tiring for a number of reasons: volume and amount of data details, technical activity with technical documents, little knowledge of dynamics of target database, compromises that have to be made. So some tips I can share to help you to do it in a more efficient way. Clarify what has to be migrated and what shouldn't be migrated. Clean source data. This will reduce the number of fields to migrate. Liaise with business analyst. That will translate technical requirements and help to explain how data will work in the target system. Rely on data migration experts that have already performed similar data migrations in the past. Lastly, tip number 5: perform comprehensive validation testing. To ensure that the goals of the data migration strategy are achieved, a company needs to develop a solid migration verification process. The data migration verification strategy needs to include ways to prove that the migration was successfully completed and data integrity was maintained. So, to quickly recap, we have covered what is CTMS and clinical data. We also talked about strategy, vision, and purpose, constraints and risks which comes as part of these kind of projects, and what approach we have taken. In the end, we also talked about challenges, learnings, and best practices. So, as Steve Jobs says, teams comes first. One pillar is strategy, but the most important factor for success is team. I'm extremely happy to be part of such a great team in Medidata, which helped us to achieve this goal. This is just the beginning of the journey. I hope this session has been very informative to you all. Thank you so much.
Great, Krishna. That was awesome. Thank you so much. And Amrit, thank you so much for joining us this evening as well. Krishna, how did that go for you?
Yeah, it was really good. It's fantastic.
Bit different than doing it at home versus in front of lots of people in a big room, I suppose.
That's true. Definitely. It's so different experience virtually. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Well, it was really interesting. So yeah, thank you very much. I believe we've got a couple of questions coming through from the audience, but Amrit, I understand you might have a question for Krishna first.
Yeah, thanks, Krishna. That was really, really good and some really useful information there. I just wanted to ask you, in terms of your role and leading a team and things like that, what kind of challenges have you faced? So not just industry challenges, but within the team itself?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thanks, Amrit. Yeah, a few challenges, definitely. But let me start with the team first. So obviously, one of the challenge is building the right team with the right skill set, right? One of the famous psychologists, Bruce Tuckman, I think, the first came up with this concept of forming, storming, and norming and performing. Typically, when we start the team, like especially forming and storming stage, you will have a lot of toothing issues, right? We went through the same issues, but we will overcome in a very less time. I must appreciate my leadership team to have great support during these stages. This defines a great culture, right? So that's one of the challenge I went through. And another is like coaching and mentoring team as well, right? So by looking at the outside, the migration is like looking very simple, but it's not very simple. So these kind of projects requires a lot of product knowledge between the both systems, whereas like source and destination. So that's one of the challenge we went through. And we built the right experts, I would say, within the team. So that's one of the challenge I went through. And few other challenges like learning, understanding customer needs at the same time while understanding the destination systems to build the flexible, secure, and scalable solutions for different types of customers and their flavor of data, right? So it's very important to wear a customer hat in addition to the technology to come up with the right solution and right strategy. So that's one of the challenge. And lastly, few other things, building the technology landscape where we can learn mistakes or gaps and iterate faster. This means time to market is the key, right, to meet company goals. These are the few challenges I could remember right now. If I have few much time, maybe I can think of a lot of challenges, but these are the things which I can find immediately.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Awesome. So I believe we have a couple of questions from the audience as well. So Scott Parker has asked, how did you manage timeliness or software predictability since you went with 40% clarity and understanding?
spot on. That's great question. I didn't expect that people will, remember that percentages. But yeah, it's a good question. As you all know, right? So we are in the agile world and we can learn from quick iterations. We have developed the solutions definitely with 40% understanding and we deliver it. And we learn from it with the iterations and we implemented the remaining part and deliver them as an incremental manner, as fully agile world. And I must admit, this was not a smooth journey. It was resulted some duplicate work on our teams, as well as the destination teams as well. And we had some challenges because of this parallel development on the destination systems. Yeah, so I hope it answers this question.
Yeah, sure. He's actually asked another question as well, so it's you're getting bombarded. But he says, so Scott says, how did you test mock data versus real life data?
Oh, yeah. The testing is one of the greatest or challenging thing, especially these kind of data migration projects, right? So even though if you have like a lot of automation, a lot of coverage with your solutions, you always miss something, right? So most of you know it's not easy, and especially in highly regulatory environments. So we have tested some kind of mock data with some data combinations and variants, especially matching to real data, while building the solution and release cycles. But when it comes to the actual migration, we have established the process where the customer, needs to test their samples with a smaller set of data with different variants of volumetric to understand how the system behavior and performance to migrate the data, and that gives like a good number when it comes to the actual migration. So yeah, we took different approaches to test the data, and we use the right automation tools to test the entire solution in different environments in different stages. Yeah.
For sure. Awesome. Thank you. So, Amrit, I believe you might have one last question before we head on over to your talk.
Yeah. So I just wanted to check with you from a startup perspective, what advice would you have in terms of data strategy?
Oh, wow. So I didn't expect this. Yeah. So data strategy, right? Any strategy is a vision, especially for how a company will, especially on the data strategy thing, how you can collect, store, manage, and share. And lastly, how can you use the data? So you need to have a clear strategy and approach as well. So approach around collecting, storing, managing, sharing in a more secured and process-oriented way, right? So that's one tip. And the second thing is about technology selection, right? Perform a well-thought technology selection process, which you will drive, right, a buy or a build options. You don't need to necessarily build everything on your own. So there is a lot of things on the market. So choose, spend like a good amount of time on the technology selection. This should also include cost, ease of adoption, and skill set, right? So you should think all these things. And another thing is about hiring. Right skills and the smart people is very much important, right? Build data migration or data management team and establish the process which will drive proper data governance. That is very much important. And a few more is like scalability. Collect the meaningful data, right? Nowadays, everybody gathering a lot of data, but so why we need that much data? So you need to think about what is meaningful data for you, right? Have that thought process. Quality is very much important than the quality, right? When it comes to the data, watch out the data growth and how the technology landscape needs to your design of your scale of the product or project. And finally, I'll say that start with simple. Don't go with too much. Start with simple and iterate as a smaller cycles and learn from it and feedback, and you can progress faster. Yeah, these are the things I could think of right now.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Fantastic. We do have one last question from the audience. Hopefully it's quite a straightforward one for you. So Zali has asked, apart from clinical trials, what else is Medidata heavily involved in?
We are very much into clinical trial. I don't think we are into anything else right now. We are recently merged into Deso Systems, so where we have a lot of other products. As part of clinical trial, we also have artificial intelligence and big data, other technologies, but everything is into clinical data.
For sure. Awesome. All right, great. Well, look, Krishna, you've managed to survive the Q&A, so well done. It's normally the hardest part, so well done. So Amrit, good luck to you, but we'll switch over to your talk now. Thanks, Krishna.
Good luck, Amrit. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you.
Hi, and good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time out to join today. I am going to be talking about going digital in the world of healthcare. I will start with an introduction. So I'm Amrit Lotay, the co-founder and chief digital officer at RhythmiaBreath. We are a health tech startup in the digital therapeutic space, and our mission is to deliver the very best of holistic cardiovascular care to heart patients around the world. We have just recently finished a prototype, and we are now looking to build our mobile app and also our electronic health record system for nurses and therapists to use. It's a really exciting time for us, and I'm glad to be part of this journey and in this industry during this time while there are so many changes taking place. In terms of my experience, I've probably had just over 16 years experience in the IT industry. 8 of those, or the most recent 8 years, have been as an IT contractor. I've had the opportunity to work in public and private sectors. I've also worked for IoT and retail, and most recently joined the startup space. So in terms of roles that I've held, I've been a business analyst, a product manager, a program manager. I've worked in service delivery. I've also managed teams of various sizes and had the opportunity to help businesses with strategy. So what we're going to go through today will be to look at the current state of healthcare, the changes that are happening, and also what the future brings for digital transformation in healthcare. We'll talk about some of the challenges and then some final thoughts from myself. So when we're looking at the current state of healthcare, when I'm looking at it, I'm thinking it's a system that's probably built in the middle of the last century. So healthcare generally, I feel, is living in the past. There have been many changes. There's been tremendous progress when it comes to medical diagnosis and treatments. But I think when it comes to care delivery, we are still far behind and nothing has changed. And if we look at just the journey of a patient from going to a GP to then being passed on to a hospital specialist, and then having some tests and scans done, to then getting their report read, and finally their treatment that's necessary. I think if we look at that entire journey, it's really slow. There's plenty of room, I feel, for improvement in that space. And I do feel we are starting to make progress, but we still have a long way to go. If we're trying to make changes to a system, for example, if we look at the NHS, I feel a lot of the systems are still very disconnected. So making changes can take quite a while. Also, when it comes to data, we're only collecting intermittent data. So a patient record only gets updated when a patient turns up to a GP surgery or has hospital treatment. And in between that, we are really missing a lot of data that could be quite important to help with prevention in the long run. Also, there's many hoops that you have to jump through. It takes a very long time to make any change. There's pilots and trials that you have to go through. And I think overall, with all the regulations, I think it can be a very high cost for this industry. So yeah, lots of room for improvement, but that's where we are now. Also, when we're looking at this from a patient experience, they're still primarily in-clinic visits. There's issues when it comes to anyone driving who has to park up and the cost of parking. Also, there's long waiting times. So if you have an appointment booked, it doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be seen at that time. You could be waiting for hours before you actually get seen. The losing of files. Now, I've experienced this myself where I've turned up to an appointment and my file has gone missing. Therefore, I've had to rebook and had to visit at a later date, which again was months away. Also, the service we seem to be getting is very general. It's not personalized, and we're only being seen to one problem at a time when actually there could be a number of different things that need to be taken into consideration before any treatment is given. Also, we have to still take out time from our busy schedules to be seen when our healthcare worker is available. So if we're looking for an appointment, it might not necessarily be at a time that is suited to us. And if we need to change that, again, we could be waiting months. So overall, the whole service, I feel, is very slow, and there can be huge improvements that could be made. And I think a lot of startups are coming up and taking that space to help. In terms of changes, I think in terms of what needs to change, when we're looking at technology systems that are used across GPs or hospitals, care homes or pharmacies, I think that they don't talk to each other. So there is a huge gap there, and they often fail frequently as well. There's still so much legacy technology and also legacy commercial arrangements. And we're also not following modern cybersecurity practices. So I think overall, we're only receiving a suboptimal level of care. Staff are always frustrated, and I think there's plenty of areas where money could be saved. We also have interoperability issues. We need to ensure that systems can actually talk to each other and that the right data actually gets to the right place at the right time. There's also complex organizational and delivery structures. So I think in terms of patients, I think we need to make sure that we're able to build and maintain trust. There's also a greater need to take user needs into consideration. And so I think we're missing, there is a big gap in that area. In terms of gaps, I think there is a huge gap between where we are now and where we need to head to. And I feel as time goes on, that gap is actually only just getting bigger. We actually have the opportunity to build an ecosystem that continually creates the best in health tech. So we are heading that way, but a lot of change needs to happen before that. So if we look at the future of transformation in healthcare, I think there's the idea of actually maintaining people's well-being rather than reacting to an episode of illness that makes sense. And I think it will be hard because it's hard to change a system that's so hardwired and very reactive. So to try and shift that to a more proactive system that works in an agile way and patients can be seen sooner rather than later, I feel there's a big gap there. All sectors of the NHS, I feel, will be fully computerized with data linkage, allowing the creation of personalized or person-based health records that include all aspects of healthcare. I also feel patients will have full access to their medical records, and many will have expert systems that use data from their medical records to support them lead healthy lifestyles and manage their long-term conditions. Also, computerized decision support systems will help to ensure that patients receive the most appropriate tailored care. When it comes to face-to-face consultations with the GP, I feel that they will still happen, but I think patients will have the opportunity to actually be able to have a video consultation, and they will have the choice of being able to do that from their own home or a workplace, for example, using a range of technologies like smart TVs and virtual reality. There was actually a research study carried out in Aberdeen where they used Skype conferencing and remote ultrasound devices that would work with people on oil rigs that actually don't have on-site clinical support. So what they were able to do was stream signals from these handheld ultrasound devices to computers in hospitals, so that specialists can actually decide whether to transport someone off the rig for treatment. And I think this type of remote triage will actually become common. Developments in artificial intelligence, so synthetic speech and animation, I think we'll see the creation of GP avatars. The appearance and sound of the avatar will actually probably be difficult to distinguish between a human, and we'll probably find that they won't appear flustered and impatient, as we often find when we're trying to communicate with somebody at the other end today. Also, I think in a doctor's bag, they'll probably carry mini laboratories where they're able to take immediate measurements for a range of diseases or physiological markers, such as basic hematology or biochemistry tests. And I think there'll be handheld ultrasound devices around the necks of GPs rather than stethoscopes. I think there'll be software that will analyze images and score the risk to help GPs and patients decide together on the best course of action. In particular, I think this will benefit elderly patients who are usually better off being cared for in their home environment, avoiding the distress of unnecessary attendance at local hospitals. And I also feel that diagnosis will be done by computers. So clinicians will become increasingly reliant upon computer decision support tools to diagnose, and that will allow for interaction between multiple clinical conditions. When we're talking about technology changes in healthcare, I think we start off by looking at wearables and the Internet of medical things. So some of the most common devices we see today in the market include heart rate sensors, exercise trackers, sweat meters, and oximeters. As a result, I think healthcare companies are being proactive by investing in wearable technology that can provide up-to-date monitoring of high-risk patients to determine the likelihood of a major health event. When we think about augmented reality and virtual reality, I think virtual reality is actually a powerful communication channel that allows to get a better sense of the customer's needs and virtually engage them with products and services. We'll also see that augmented reality, where computer graphics actually appear in the real world, as demonstrated by Microsoft's HoloLens. I think patients will be able to review diagnostic results wherever they are. From startups to pharma giants, I think everyone is betting on virtual reality, and I think the numbers actually back that up. Artificial intelligence, it's probably more than just a digital transformation trend in healthcare. Artificial intelligence represents the epitome of medical innovation, and industry players are actually eager to invest millions in it. The healthcare AI-powered tools market is expected to exceed $34 billion by 2025. That's $34 billion, which means this technology will actually shape almost all facets of the industry. We're also going to see a lot more chatbots and virtual health assistants, which is another AI-based technology that patients are now becoming familiar with. Chatbots can fill a multitude of roles, from customer service representatives to diagnostic tools and even therapists. I think the versatility is being translated in heavy investments. The global healthcare chatbot market, for example, is projected to reach $314.3 million by 2023. So that's quite a big number. When it comes to big data, I think information aggregated through big data and other sources can actually help healthcare companies develop healthy lifestyle recommendations for their patients. It will also lower the rate of medication errors. It'll help with facilitating preventative care. I think, like, for example, a high volume of people stepping into emergency rooms are actually recurring patients. So it will help to reduce those numbers. And it will also help with more accurate staffing. When we're looking at blockchain, blockchain in healthcare is all about removing the middleman. It's about increasing the data insecurity in health organizations, and they should look at utilizing blockchain technology. It's also about increasing the security of various transactional activities in the healthcare space, while eliminating bureaucracy and manual inefficiencies, and improving the quality of care and democratizing patient data. According to Healthcare Weekly, 40% of healthcare executives see blockchain as one of the top 5 priorities in the industry. And medical data is currently being recorded in unstructured formats across multiple electronic health record systems. So already short-staffed doctors and nurses are struggling to manually log every piece of information. So this leads to huge errors such as duplicate medical records, misdiagnosis, delayed treatments, and sometimes even death. So I think blockchain can really help to improve the healthcare industry in this space. There's also 5G. 5G will actually make buffering a thing of the past, allowing for instantaneous streaming or downloading and uploading. For telemedicine, this would mean the experience of better video conference calling and quality, and also it won't be dependent on location. Doctors will also have access to accurate real-time imaging of organs, soft tissue and bones, for example, which in turn will greatly decrease the risk of misdiagnosis. And I think the biggest disruption we're going to see will be with the wearable medical device market. I think 5G will really disrupt there. In terms of 3D printing, the world's first 3D printed bioengineered trachea actually was transplanted in 2013. So I think we will start to see a lot more of 3D printing that will help with complex structures such as kidneys, livers and lungs. And it will allow patients to have bespoke replacement tissue and organs made, or tailored therapies created on site. Robots can also help in various different scenarios. So if I'm taking the elderly, for example, helping them move a cup of coffee from one room to another, or reminding them to take their medication on time, or even bringing their medication to them from another room. In Japan, they've actually developed a robot that can lift a patient out of a bed and move them to another room. So, but at the moment, obviously, these are very expensive to operate. But all in all, I think information governance procedures must keep up with the pace of technology, because they need to ensure that open access is not abused. So, for example, with a unique identification chip inserted under the skin, which holds patients' medical records, should only be accessed by them and nobody else. So there's some room there. I mean, each of these areas, there's so much information around them and how they can benefit the medical industry or the healthcare world. So yeah, it would take me a while to go through each of these in a lot of detail. Also, healthcare startups. So this slide, for example, just shows 150 of the strong startups, and that's from 18 different countries. And this is just 150 from chosen from a pool of 8,000 contenders. So it just goes to show that how fast the healthcare startup world is growing and disrupting the healthcare market. It's helping to identify gaps and creating new and innovative products and services for patients all around the world. I think that's exciting. In terms of challenges, I guess adopting agile approaches comes to mind. Healthcare companies are facing a growing pressure to innovate in product development with services and customer experience. And nearly 80% of healthcare executives say they need to be more agile, but actually only 30% of them are familiar with agile innovation. Healthcare companies are under increasing pressure to improve quality and reduce costs. So I think in order to win in the coming decade, leaders are having to reinvent their organizations for rapidly evolving markets. And above all, they're having to innovate faster and designing products and services for better customer experiences. So I think a lot of organizations are going to have to really try and adopt agile approaches to keep up. In terms of data processing, I think the major challenge in healthcare industry is the processing and analysis of data. Part of the problem is due to just the sheer amount of data that's collected by hospitals, clinics, and health professionals. And I think without robust AI systems that can analyze data, it's going to be hard for organizations to deliver better or more personalized care for patients. Collecting and synchronizing data is another important challenge. With the rise of telemedicine, doctor visits are taking place across multiple channels, but it's making it harder to actually update patients' records. So I think there's a lot of improvement that needs to be made there. In terms of GDPR, I think this places new requirements on the way organizations collect, use and store personal data. So all organizations need to stay on top of this. With cybersecurity, the challenge here is, there was a study conducted by IBM that revealed healthcare organizations actually had the highest costs associated with data breaches, which were 3 times higher than other industries. So in healthcare, I think user authentication deficiencies, endpoint leakage, excessive user permissions are actually 3 of the most common vulnerabilities. Taking appropriate measures to strengthen these areas is essential. And I think it's essential to the security of the healthcare industry. In 2018, there was actually a software coding error that was blamed for the distribution of sensitive and confidential information of 150,000 patients in the UK. So it just goes to show that it really needs to be taken more seriously. Organizations producing software or mobile applications, websites, or Internet of Medical Things devices must ensure that any bugs like this are uncovered before launch or update of a product or service. I think digital user experience is an error. So digital product or services that function perfectly and are user-friendly is a major challenge. The end user needs to be taken into consideration in order to produce a product or service that is easy to use. I think in the healthcare industry, it's ultra important because there's many products that will be used by both patients and medical professionals. There's also the uncomfortable or poorly designed device, for example, which can taint the patient's experience and cause them to remove the device, limiting the data that it's actually able to collect. And on the other side, if the software for a Internet of Medical Things device is difficult to use, then it will make it difficult for professionals to actually prescribe the device to patients. Also, there's a lack of understanding, there's a lack of standards, especially when it comes to Internet of Medical Things. So it makes it difficult for these products and services to function perfectly in an ecosystem of connected devices. And then we've got quality assurance and testing. So I think it plays a key role in the production of any digital product or service, especially in healthcare. Launching a connected medical product or website with bugs is actually a recipe for disaster. Software bugs can undermine the performance and erode confidence in the brand of the organization. So I think QA testing is mandatory to an organization's or product success. So, but that brings a huge challenge of its own. In terms of final thoughts, I think healthcare is still living in the past. There's a large number of changes that need to take place in the healthcare industry. There's numerous hospitals and providers that have been looking into expanding telemedicine services, which allow doctors and patients to connect without the risk of anyone getting sick. But I think that's an area that still needs a lot of work. In a crisis like coronavirus, for example, things that were once a nice to have start to become a need to have. And one of the things these stress tests, or the stress test of this pandemic, has actually shown are some of the weaknesses in the existing models of how you disseminate information, how you communicate with patients, and how you deliver information to patients so that they're kept informed. There's several barriers that challenge healthcare organizations that are seeking to adopt Agile. So there's cultural changes that are required. And I think in terms of actually being able to form Agile teams that collaborate and accelerate the product development, I think needs a lot of senior leadership support. And I think if Agile is embraced in healthcare organizations, it will enable new Agile health practices, allow care to be more adaptive and responsive to new knowledge, improve care processes to deliver more value, and more effectively adopt new technologies to improve the care for patients. And I really think we should focus on individuals and interactions over processes and tools. We should look at working software over comprehensive documentation. We should also look at customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change rather than just following a plan. Where patients were not so accepting of virtual care, I think we're starting to see a shift in mindset. And during this time, patients have actually had no option other than having to have a virtual video or phone call instead of a face-to-face appointment. So I think that's really helped to accelerate the growth in this market. Also, we've got to start looking at healthcare from the perspective of a patient. The first to help the patient understand the drivers that impact their chronic conditions better, so that we can play a more active role in managing it. I think we also need to get more involved in health rather than just sickness. So that could be supporting, coaching patients with in relation to sleep, breathing, stress, eating, smoking, drinking, and exercise, as well as managing conditions properly and adherence to medication. I think the aim is to proactively keep them well rather than react when they become ill. We're essentially looking at chronic patients who have to live with conditions 24/7. So I think care models should also reflect that. It's not just telling people what to do, it's truly engaging them and providing them with smart technology so they can closely monitor themselves. And they can have devices that constantly measure the likes of heart rate, blood pressure, breathing, weight, or activity levels. I think this data that is then collected can be streamed from devices or smartphone apps and processed through algorithms that show how their health is evolving. And I think we can start to see patterns that will emerge and can really show when intervention is needed. With the growth of wearable technology and remote monitoring, I think there will be greater emphasis on gathering and analysing large amounts of data. This will support more personalised medicine where treatment will be individually tailored to the patient. So just a decade after the first Fitbit was launched, the wearables revolution, I think health tracking devices are now becoming more common. We will also start to see things like hearing aids or earbuds with embedded sensors, smart contact lenses, which will be packed with thousands of biosensors and engineered to pick up early indications of cancer and other conditions. And also we'll start to see implantable devices that will include chips that are placed under the skin that will hold a patient's medical record, or a sensor that could monitor blood chemistry, for example. But I think without the right tools, digital healthcare won't be able to scale. And I do believe that it is a really exciting time ahead with all the digital innovation that's taking place in the healthcare industry. And I think that it can really help to provide better levels of care, products and services to patients and people around the globe. So yeah, I'm really excited about what the future brings. So thank you very much, and thank you for listening.
Amrit, that was fantastic, really interesting. Thank you so much. How was it for you?
Yeah, it was good, a bit long, and there was so much information. I could have gone on forever, but
it's a big subject. It's a big subject, Jay.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we have got quite a lot of questions coming through, which is great. So yeah, we'll get to those in 1 second. Krishna, I understand you might have a question to kick us off.
Yes, I do have a few questions, but I can start with one of my questions and then we can give a chance to other people as well. But before I ask my question, it was really, really great talk. Thank you so much for sharing all the information and the great strategy, very well thought for the startup. Very good. And I wish you all the very best for your startup. Yeah, so going back to my first question, I would really want to understand what are the challenges around your startup entering into healthcare space, as it's very highly regulated industry, right? So can you just share some of the challenges you went through entering into healthcare?
Yeah, so I guess firstly, like my background isn't healthcare generally, so I'm quite new to it. But I think some of the challenges we're facing are getting the right medical support as a cardiologist to support our work, and get them to actually send patients to us so that we can do some testing. So the NHS already have their own cardiac rehab service. So it's now just trying to show them that actually when you look at patients from a holistic perspective, we can actually really help them to recover quicker, and we don't just look at a very basic service, which I feel is what's currently being offered. And then again, when a patient goes onto their rehab journey, say after a heart attack, it actually takes a long time for them to be seen. And by then they may have found their own ways to recover. So I think in terms of challenges, it's getting the right support from the medical industry itself. In terms of regulations, I think there's so many different regulations we have to go through, and they cost a lot of money and they take a long time. So where I had this vision that, we'd get a product out sooner, we're now delayed just because of the length of time it takes. So for CQC, for example, also because we are a mobile app, we are now having to register software as a medical device. So we now fall under one of the classes for medical device. And that, again, takes quite a long time before we can get sign off for that. So I think generally it's very costly and heavily regulated. So yeah, lots of challenges there.
I can imagine. Thanks for your answer. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hopefully worthwhile. So at least it's you're treading down the right path anyway. But yeah, we do have some questions from the audience as well, and yeah, talking about the medical device was a nice segue into our first question as well. So Karen has shot through a few questions, but starting off with her first one, she talks about remote ultrasound. Sounds interesting. Which device did they send to the patients for this approach?
Oh, I don't know what the actual device was, so I don't have a name of the device. I do know it was an ultrasound device, and the study can be found online. I can look it up and share a link in the YouTube information section. So yeah, it's an ultrasound device. That's all I know for now.
Sure, no worries. We've got a couple more questions. So you might have touched on this a little bit already, but our friends over at the Spill the Beans Digital Health podcast have asked, how do you think the NHS will adapt to the changes in technology within healthcare?
Well, they've got a big challenge on their hands. I think there's a lot of legacy technology there, and there's a lot of changes that have to take place. I think I also mentioned during the presentation that there's a lot of startups actually filling those gaps right now. So I think a big challenge for the NHS is going to be trying to keep up with this. And they might end up, buying some of these startups and sort of integrating them within their services. So, for example, where we are providing cardiac rehabilitation services, the NHS already have that of their own. But, for us to now integrate with the NHS, it's going to take a long time because their systems are so disconnected. So it's not just a simple case of us, replacing their service with ours. So I think the NHS has got a long road ahead. They are working on it. So there's NHSX. So I think they are looking at some of these things and also trying to think about the future with the patient at the centre. So I think there's a lot of change they have to go through. So it's quite a long road ahead, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. Fantastic. So we've got another question from Karen, who says, do you think UK companies will still want to comply with GDPR after December and Brexit if they don't have European clients yet?
I think in terms of GDPR, so even after Brexit, we are still going to have to have our own regulations. And I think they will be as close as possible to the GDPR regulations as they stand. So even if you don't have clients in the UK right now, in Europe right now, you will still have to abide by regulations. And so I think it is important that we do look at GDPR and make sure that our data and we capturing the consent of patients generally. So it's important regardless. So.
Absolutely. And I mean, you might have kind of touched on Ada's question next as well, who's talked about regulation, but just to repeat the question, it's I get the impression healthcare industry is quite regulated. How does that impact the speed of digital innovation?
It slows it down, like really slows it down. So I think they are trying to look at ways to open up a pathway for startups, for example. But there's a lot of regulation, and you can't just put a new device, for example, in front of the patient and not have it, checked by anyone beforehand. So I think regulations are important. I just wish there was a way to speed things up.
Don't we all? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I think we've got one last question come through, and then I believe Krishna has another question for us to close on. So the question is again from Karen, who says, do you think predictive healthcare will be embraced in the near future by users who give data for it and by companies providing services so that healthcare issues can be prevented more? Big questions. Let me know if you need to repeat it.
Yeah, no, I think when it comes to prevention, I think if we take big data, for example, that's the kind of stuff we'd be looking at to collect as much information and, some machine learning and algorithms to help us in the prevention space. And I think when it comes to private companies and patients that are working with private companies, they're probably more likely to take that up. And I think it will take a while before somewhere like the NHS try to adopt this and patients are comfortable with it. But I think when it comes to private medical companies, patients are already accepting of this. And I think it's important, because why wouldn't you want to be able to prevent an event from happening? If I was going to have a heart attack, if I knew in advance, I would want to do something about it. So I think it is important. And if I was a patient, I would definitely embrace that.
Absolutely. Okay, Krishna, do you have another question for us?
Yes. My last question. So how are you thinking of using big data and AI to tie with your strategy to come to the execution? So how are you planning to use these technologies?
So when it comes to big data, again, like the prevention side, the machine learning and the algorithms that we can use there, I think will be really important, so that we can actually put together some plans for like well-being and healthy lifestyles for patients. And I think that would be really important. When it comes to AI, I think we'd be using AI in terms of chatbots and virtual assistants. So we might actually have virtual therapists instead of employing real therapists, as long as we have enough data to be able to provide a real service. But we'll be using that. And again, even with virtual reality, when it comes to headsets, I think when we're looking at the well-being side, they're really important in terms of we could use them to make a patient feel like they're in a totally different environment. So in a more tranquil environment, for example, to calm them down, to de-stress. And I think they can also use that environment to actually actively take part as well. So I think in terms of technology, there's a lot of new things coming in the market and new ways, and it's getting cheaper as well. So once upon a time, it was very expensive to have any of these. But I think as there's more competition in the market, the prices are coming down generally. So it'll be more affordable.
Agree. Thank you.
Fantastic. We have just had one late question come through. So hopefully it's okay just to ask this one. Oh, there's another question just come through now as well. So two more, and then I promise we'll let you go. We'll release you. So a question from Zali is, please expand on changes in patient experience generally with digital health apps, as well as domiciliary care services. Also, are you aware of any alternative health startups?
So that's about 3 questions there. Okay, so in terms of smart apps and digital health apps, I think a lot of people probably have some kind of health monitoring on their phones already, if they're wearing smart watches, for example. So people are already starting to use that technology and gather information. And I think it's really empowering people to make a difference in their own health. So rather than getting to the stage where they have to phone up a GP or go into hospital, I think these devices or these apps are really helping patients to become more empowered. So I definitely think they're useful, and there's probably new apps coming out more frequently than they used to. There's a lot of startups coming up in this space. There could be just like, for example, a smartwatch that connects to an app and provides you your heart rate, or gives you an ECG reading, for example. And I think a lot of patients are now taking advantage of the information they're getting, and they're getting it firsthand. It's on their device, they can see it, they know what's going on. They might not know necessarily how to read and interpret that information, but they're getting alerts. So if something doesn't seem right, they're able to manage that or do something about it, which they weren't able to do before. And I've forgotten the last part of that question.
That's okay. Are you aware of any alternative health startups?
Oh, there's loads. There was a slide I showed with 150 different startups, and that's just part of 8,000 new contenders. So there's startups coming up everywhere in different spaces. Some of them are medical related and some of them are just well-being apps. So yeah, there's loads.
There are indeed. Okay, fantastic. And then last question, I promise, from Inez. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. On the data migration piece, did you also face redesign issues, or the main priority was to do re-platforming?
Is that for Krishna?
I think that might be. I was halfway through that question. I was thinking that might be for Krishna. So you're off the hook, which is a good. Krishna, do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Sure. So on the data migration piece, did you also face redesign issues, or the main priority was to do re-platforming?
Redesign issues, yes. And going with multiple iterations, not with the re-platforming. Yeah.
Fantastic. At least it was an easy question for you. Okay, well, I think that pretty much brings us to a close tonight then. So Amrit, Krishna, thank you guys so much. Now that it's all over, do you have any regrets?
No.
You can save those when we get off the live stream maybe, but yeah, look, thank you very much for taking your time this evening to share your presentations with us. They were absolutely fantastic, and I felt that there was lots of amazing content in there. I'm sure there'll be lots of conversations that come off the back of these, and if anyone wants to rewatch the meetup or your presentations, then absolutely just you can rewind and it will stay up there forever on the internet, so you can go through and have a rewatch. But thank you both so much for taking the time, and thanks to everyone for watching, and we'll see you at the next event.
Thank you Duncan, for organizing, and thank you so much guys for watching this. It's really a great pleasure to share some of the experience from my side.
Yeah, likewise, same again. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks, Duncan.
No worries. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.